There is a farm in Lancaster County that has no electricity, no bug spray, and no zapper humming on the porch. And yet, on a July evening, when the neighbours half a mile down the road are swatting at their arms and retreating indoors by 7, this family sits outside until the sky actually goes dark. Nobody here is getting bitten. That is not luck. It is a system, built over 2 centuries without a single engineer ever signing off on it. And by the time the sun goes down tonight, it will have killed more mosquitoes than every electric bug zapper on that neighbouring street combined, running all night, bulbs glowing blue, and mostly just frying moths. To understand how, you have to stop thinking like someone shopping for a product. The Amish do not kill mosquitoes directly. They recruit an army that does it for them. And most of that army was already living on the property before anyone thought to count it. Start with the barn. Up in the eaves, tucked into gaps no wider than a finger, a colony of bats is stirring before the family even finishes supper. Wildlife biologists have spent decades arguing about exactly how many mosquitoes a single bat can eat. You have probably heard the number 1 bat, 1 hour, 1,000 mosquitoes. That figure traces back to a 1960 laboratory study, bats released into a small room with nothing else to eat. And it is not really a fair stand-in for a wild bat, with moths, beetles, and every other flying thing on the menu. So take the 1,000 an hour claim with a grain of salt. What is not in dispute is the colony math. Biologists tracking one Florida colony of 30,000 bats calculated that it captured around 50 tons of insects a year, and more than 15 tons of that was mosquitoes. Multiply a number like that across every barn in Amish country still standing with its roof intact, still left alone instead of sealed up and exterminated, and thousands of mosquitoes a night stops sounding like a boast. It starts sounding conservative. But bats alone do not explain the whole picture, because bats hunt in the air after the mosquitoes have already hatched, already flown, already found someone's ankle to land on. The real work happens earlier than that. It happens in the water, days before a single wing is ever airborne. Walk the property line and you will notice something most modern homeowners never think about. There is no standing water anywhere. Not in a forgotten bucket by the shed, not in a clogged gutter, not in an old tire dumped behind the barn. A mosquito needs still water to lay its eggs, and needs roughly a week for those eggs to become biting adults. Amish farms get walked daily by someone doing chores, whether that is hauling feed at 5 in the morning or checking fence line before dusk. A trough gets noticed. A puddle gets drained before it has a chance to matter. It sounds almost too simple to be the answer, and that is exactly why it works. You cannot swat your way out of an infestation that never got the chance to start. For the water you cannot remove, like the livestock trough the cattle actually need to drink from, there is a second recruit: ducks. A small flock working a pond or a marshy corner of pasture will pick through the mud and the shallows, eating mosquito larvae by the dozens before any of them ever grow wings. It is the same reason some organic vegetable farms keep a few ducks wandering the rows instead of spraying the beds. The birds are not decoration wandering the yard for the children's amusement. They are a standing patrol that happens to also lay breakfast. Then there is the recruit doing the heaviest lifting of all, and it is not the one you would guess walking past the farm. Dragonflies. The research here is actually solid, not folklore. A single adult dragonfly eats somewhere between 30 and 100 mosquitoes a day. And researchers who have clocked their mid-air hunting success put it above 90%, a strike rate that makes a lion look clumsy by comparison. Amish farmers do not order dragonflies from a catalogue. They do not need to. They just keep a shallow, unsprayed pond or even a rain barrel with a bit of vegetation growing in it, because dragonfly nymphs live underwater for up to a year before they hatch, hunting mosquito larvae the entire time they are down there. A healthy, undisturbed pond breeds its own defense force, season after season, without anyone doing a thing to maintain it beyond leaving it alone. That is the part that trips up most people trying to copy this at home. The instinct in a modern backyard is to spray something the moment a mosquito shows up. But spraying kills the predators just as fast as it kills the pests, and often faster, because dragonfly nymphs are more fragile than the mosquito larvae they are eating. Spray the pond and you do not just kill this week's larvae. You kill the nymphs that would have hunted next month's larvae too, and the whole system collapses behind you, sometimes for an entire season, because a pond takes far longer to repopulate with predators than it takes for mosquitoes to fly back in from the next wet ditch over. An Amish farm, running on decades of the same unsprayed pasture, has, without ever intending to, built an ecosystem where the mosquito is badly outnumbered by the things that eat it. A neighbour 2 farms over might get 1 clean week off a fogger, then face a worse infestation than before, because the fogger wiped out the predators along with the prey, and predators take a season to rebuild, while mosquitoes take a week. There is one more bird worth mentioning, and it is worth being honest about this one too. Drive through Amish country and you will see purple martin houses on poles in nearly every yard. Sometimes a boxy wooden apartment building, sometimes a cluster of hollow gourds hanging the way Native American communities hung them centuries before European settlers arrived. Amish families tend martin colonies with real devotion, chasing off starlings that would otherwise wipe out the nests, feeding the birds when they arrive back from South America too early for the insects to be flying yet. For years, conservation groups sold the public on the idea that a single martin could eat something like 10,000 mosquitoes a day, and that number turned out to be badly overstated. Martins mostly hunt higher in the sky than mosquitoes tend to fly, going after dragonflies, flying ants, and larger insects instead. The Amish will tell you the same thing themselves, if you ask them directly, instead of assuming. They keep martins because the birds go after flying pests generally, not because of a specific mosquito body count. It is a real tradition, just not for the exact reason it usually gets credited. There is a 4th animal doing patrol duty, and it is the loudest one on the farm by a wide margin: Guinea fowl. Amish and Mennonite homesteaders have kept them for generations, and the research on them is actually stronger than the research on martins. A study out of Long Island found that free-ranging guinea fowl measurably reduced tick populations on the ground they patrolled, and guinea keepers everywhere will tell you the same behaviour extends to grasshoppers, beetles, ants, and whatever else is moving through the grass, mosquitoes included when the birds happen across them low to the ground. Nobody has run a controlled study specifically counting mosquitoes in a guinea's stomach, the way biologists have counted them in a bat's guano. So call that part word of mouth rather than hard data. What is documented is the constant motion. A guinea fowl does not wait for insects to come to it, the way a chicken scratching for seed does. It actively hunts, head down, moving in a pack across the pasture from sunup to dusk. And every insect that pack disturbs and doesn't eat gets pushed toward whatever else is hunting that day. The birds are also famous for their alarm call, a harsh, relentless shriek the second anything unfamiliar sets foot on the property. Which is precisely why some Amish families keep a small flock, even in communities where nobody would call them a mosquito solution on their own. They are one more piece of a patrol that never fully stops moving. Barn swallows round out the sky patrol, working the barnyard airspace low and fast, where the purple martins usually fly higher. One Amish family in Pennsylvania, quoted in a piece about their bird keeping, put it about as plainly as it can be put. They love their purple martins, and they love their barn swallows just as much, for the same reason. Swallows dip and cut across the barnyard at dusk, exactly where the biting insects are thickest, close to the animals, close to the manure pile, close to every place a mosquito would want to be. Between the swallows working low and the martins working high, there is very little airspace over an Amish farm that isn't being hunted by something with wings during the exact hours mosquitoes are most active. Even the smoke plays its part. Come evening, when the cook fire in the summer kitchen is still smouldering or a small brush pile burns down at the edge of a field, that thin haze drifting across the yard is doing double duty. Mosquitoes track a warm body largely by scent and by the carbon dioxide it gives off, and heavy smoke scrambles both signals at once. It is the same reason campers have huddled near a fire for 100 years without ever knowing the biology behind why it worked. The Amish never needed the biology. They just noticed, generation after generation, that the porch near the smoke was the porch without bites and the porch across the yard was not. Then there is what gets planted right up against the house itself. Mint along the foundation. Citronella-scented geraniums in pots by the walkway. Basil near the kitchen door, more out of habit passed down than any theory behind it. On their own, a few pots of herbs are not clearing a farm of anything. But stacked on top of the bats, the ducks, the dragonflies, the smoke, and the daily habit of never letting water sit still for more than a day, it is one more layer in a wall the mosquito has to get through before it ever reaches skin. By the time the family actually sits down on that porch, most of the work is already invisible. The bats are somewhere overhead, too high and too fast to track by eye. The dragonflies have gone still for the night, tucked into the reeds at the edge of the pond. The guineas have gone quiet in their coop. What is left is just an ordinary summer evening, the smell of wood smoke drifting low, a lantern instead of a porch light, because a porch light would only call in more insects than it ever kept away. Nobody at that table is thinking about predator-prey ratios or larval development cycles. They are just sitting outside after a long day, the way their parents did, and their grandparents before that, on a farm that quietly kills more mosquitoes in a single evening than most people's yards manage in a season. Now put this next to what a modern suburban yard is actually doing about the same problem. A homeowner buys a zapper, plugs it in, and watches it glow blue all night. And the truth is, most of what it kills is moths and other harmless insects drawn to the light, since mosquitoes are not especially pulled toward it in the first place. Or a company gets hired to fog the yard every 3 weeks, a broad treatment that knocks down mosquitoes for a few days and takes the bees working the flower beds and any dragonfly resting on the grass right along with them. The lawn stays green, the gutters stay clogged with last autumn's leaves, holding water nobody ever checks. And every few weeks, the cycle starts over, because nothing was ever actually recruited to do the job permanently. The chemical is the whole plan, and the chemical never sleeps on the job, but it never really wins the job either. None of what the Amish do was designed in a lab. Nobody sat down with a whiteboard and engineered a pest control strategy from first principles. It came from something much slower. Generations of people who could not buy their way out of a mosquito problem, so they had to actually solve it, and who noticed year after year which choices made the evenings on the porch bearable and which ones did not. Keep the barn roof intact so the bats stay through August. Keep the pond unsprayed so the dragonflies keep breeding. Walk the property so the water never sits long enough to matter. None of it was a single decision made once. It was 100 small ones, repeated until they became habit, and then repeated long enough across generations that habit became tradition, and tradition became a system nobody had to think about anymore. And that is really the strangest part of this whole story. The most effective mosquito control on that farm is not a product at all. It is an old barn nobody tore down, a pond nobody drained, a flock of ducks that mostly just look like ducks, and a family that still walks its own land every single evening instead of trusting a machine to do it while they are indoors. Thousands of mosquitoes will die on that property tonight, mostly to bats and dragonflies working in shifts, air and water covered at once, and not one of them will be killed by anything with a battery in it or a chemical warning label on the side. Maybe that is the actual question worth sitting with. We built machines and chemicals to solve a problem that families like this one solved 200 years ago just by paying attention to what was already living around them. It makes you wonder how many other problems we are spraying at, buying our way through, when the answer was never a product on a shelf. It was a habit somebody's grandparents kept, quietly, without ever calling it a system at all.